Give me the keys, Mom. Your keys, now. You're moving out on Friday. It wasn't a hug. It was a slap. My head snapped sideways and the world flashed white. My glasses skittered across the kitchen tile, and the old copper pan above the stove rang like a church bell, struck by lightning. I stood there with the taste of iron blooming across my tongue, counting the beats of the bell, 1, 2, 3, as if the sound could steady me. Outside, rain tapped the porch roof, polite, persistent, like a stranger at midnight. Inside, my daughter-in-law's breath came fast and hot. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," she said, reaching for the keyring that hung on the little ceramic hook Michael screwed into the wall in 1987. House, shed, side gate, mailbox. I know them by weight, by shape, like the bones in my hand. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, but the voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded far away, thin as thread. I bent, slow, feeling for the glasses with my fingertips. "Careful!" she snapped. "You're unsteady." I heard that word and felt the stairs behind me, the steep ones that squeal on the third step, the ones I polish every spring. For a second, I saw myself tumbling down them. Old woman, broken hip, ambulance lights smearing red across the maple leaves. Fake mercy. Real ruin. Am I paranoid? I whispered to the hallway mirror, catching my trembling reflection as I straightened. Am I crazy? Or did I hear them whisper deed, guardianship, appraisal last night? I had heard it through the heat vent, the way houses carry secrets and soup smells. Their quick little words, the click of a pen, a calendar page turning to Friday. "Keys," she said, palm open like a traffic cop. "And the pillbox. We'll manage your medication from now on." My medication. I tasted the word, bitter as aspirin on the tongue. Rain thickened. Somewhere in the house, a clock breathed. I slid the glasses back onto my face, the world snapping into edges. Tile grout, a nick in the counter, the faint bruise already rising on my cheek. I squared my shoulders, felt Michael at my back, the maple at my front, and the keyring cool against my palm. I picked up my glasses, straightened, and whispered so only the house could hear. "You will not take my house." I was 22 in 1979, and we had nothing but a hand-me-down couch and a wedding cake we ate with our fingers. Michael brought home a second-hand fan that clicked every third swing like a metronome, and I learned to sleep to it the way you sleep to a husband's breathing. First as noise, then as comfort. "We'll make it," he said, setting his lunch pail on the counter, as if it were a promise instead of a dented metal box. "We'll make it with casseroles and change in a jar." "Casseroles and change?" I laughed, scraping the last of the frosting off the cardboard. "That's a gourmet budget?" "It's a life," he said, and kissed my forehead, grease on his fingertips, summer heat pressing against the window like a curious cat. By 1985, we were paying $700 in rent for a place over a barber shop that smelled like talc and cigarettes. I can still feel the way the floor vibrated when the clippers started up at dawn, the way the steam pipes ticked like old bones. Everyone we knew talked in numbers that year. Gas by the gallon, bread by the loaf, rent by the month. I kept my numbers on index cards tucked in a recipe tin. Light bill, water bill, a line for leftover if we're lucky. And then the second tin, the one Michael labeled Someday House, where I wrote $25,000 on the inside of the lid, like a prayer you have to see every time you open it. 7 years, he said, tightening the lid. "We save 7 years. And if the roof caves in," I teased, flicking the card with the electric bill. "We put a pan under it," he said. "We keep saving." I took a job in the hospital laundry because it was steady. Steam, rinse, fold, repeat. The laundry room was a world of its own. The thud of the big machines, the wet heat that settled in your hair, the green soap that got under your nails and stayed. When shifts ended, I'd sit on an upturned crate and mend uniforms for an extra $10 a bag, tiny stitches by the light of a humming bulb. "You're going to sew your eyes shut," the supervisor said once, laughing. $10 is $10, I answered, and bit the thread clean. Michael was a lineman, the kind of work that looks like a postcard when the sun hits the bucket truck just right, and like a headline when the weather turns mean. He'd come home with windburn on his cheeks and splinters in his gloves, and eat 2 plates before he said a word. "Lines held," he'd say finally, and I'd pour him tea. "Lines will hold," I'd answer, and we'd both hear the double meaning, the one about the wire, and the one about the 2 of us. We had Daniel in 1983 and Lena in 1987. Babies who arrived like small, astonishing packages, who turned sleep into a math problem and love into a muscle. We bought the house in 1989 with $25,000. We saved over 7 years and a mortgage that made my heart thump like shoes in a dryer. The realtor shook our hands and handed me a key so bright, it looked like a slice of afternoon. I planted a maple in the front yard when Daniel was 6, because I wanted something that would root the 4 of us to this ground. Something that would outlive every layoff and thunderstorm. "Someday," I told the sapling, watering can bumping my knee, "you'll shade the porch." "Trees are slow," Lena complained, braiding grass into bracelets. "So are good things," I said. "So are mortgages. The house was a patient teacher. It taught us about leaks and lime, about the sound a furnace makes when it's lying, about sanding the banister with your whole arm so the grain wakes up and accepts the stain. I learned the squeak in the 3rd stair, the way February sunlight falls across the kitchen table like a scarf. Michael learned the smell of the basement when a storm is coming, and how to talk to the fuse box like an old war buddy. "Easy there," he'd murmur, flipping a switch. "Easy there yourself," I'd call down, and the kids would laugh. We counted years the way you count stitches, and then the counting changed. Michael's heart gave out in 2011 in a way that felt both sudden and not. Like a roof you knew was soft, but still believed in. The life insurance was small, and there were bills that arrived like winter birds, one by one, cold and insistent. I sat at the kitchen table with a pen and the mortgage statement, and told myself numbers were still numbers, and if I could mend sleeves, I could mend this. The last $8,300 I paid myself. It wasn't a lot by the world's measure, but it was everything by mine. "Lines will hold," I whispered to the empty chair, and the house breathed back. "Mom, you don't have to do everything alone," Daniel said, rubbing the back of his neck, a habit he picked up when his lies were still small. "I'm not alone," I told him, passing a plate of lemon bars. "I have the house. I have the maple. I have you and Lena." Lena moved to Chicago because that's what bright girls from small towns do when their shoes want more concrete under them. "I'm busy, Mom," she would say, voice warm but distant, the way you sound when you're talking on a bus. "Call me anytime." "I mean it." "I do," I'd say. And I did. But I learned quickly that anytime meant Sundays between yoga and groceries, or late night when the city's noise turned into a lullaby she needed in the background. Daniel married. Kelsey 5 years ago in a nice dress and better lighting. She hugged me too tightly in the photos, the kind of squeeze people do when they think affection is a performance. "We'll take care of you," she said, teeth perfect. "I'm not a fern," I joked, and she laughed as if I'd said something clever and inconvenient at once. Back then, the friction was fine as flour. Kelsey liked open floor plans and used the phrase, "good bones," about houses the way some people talk about family blood. "You know you could knock out this wall," she said one afternoon, tapping the kitchen as if it were a stubborn neighbor. "No, I could bake a cake in a cast-iron skillet," I answered, measuring sugar, "but I like it better in a pan." "You could flip this place," she said, half joking, eyes already measuring the maple's shadow. "Old people houses are gold mines." "It's not a mine," I told her, keeping my voice even. "It's a home." Daniel came around with charming shrugs and little asks. "Mom, could you help with $3,500 for closing costs?" he said once. Words gentle as feathers. "Just a loan. Kelsey and I will square it right away." "Of course," I said, because mothers are pattern and promise. "Pay me back when you can." "We will," he said, and hugged me with the same tight performative squeeze his wife used. He did not pay it back. He never mentioned it again, as if the number had evaporated over their new granite countertop like steam. "Maybe he forgot," Lena said on the phone, voice small. "People don't forget debts," I said. "They forget gratitude." I kept a hope chest in the bedroom closet, mahogany with a scar where the mover scraped it on the doorframe in '92. Inside were the birth certificates, the deed, a photocopy of the mortgage stamped paid in full, and Michael's union pin tucked in a small velvet box that once held a garnet brooch. Every so often I would take the pin out and polish it with a dab of toothpaste and think about the way his hands held wires taut against the sky. "You kept us lit," I'd tell the pin, laughing at myself. "You kept us lit, and now I keep the papers safe." "You and those papers," Lena teased once, visiting in a storm, shaking rain from her umbrella onto the mat. "You guard them like treasure." "They are treasure," I said. "The kind you can't eat but you can sleep under." The maple grew the way good promises do. Slow, then all at once. It shaded the porch by the time I was 50 and made the afternoon light gentle. In fall it turned the color of a warm pie crust. Kelsey called it yard clutter, and I felt the first cold edge of something I didn't want to name. "Clutter?" I repeated, wiping my hands on a towel. "It's a tree." "It blocks curb appeal," she said, making a rectangle with her fingers like a director framing a shot. "Buyers want clean lines." "Buyers?" I echoed, tasting the word like an unripe fruit. Holidays came and went like trains, loud at the station, lonely after. Thanksgiving last year, Daniel's cousin, realtor, sharp shoes, asked whether my house tests for lead. He did it with a smile, the kind that buries its teeth in courtesy. "Why would you ask me that at my table?" I said, handing him the cranberry sauce. "Just thinking of resale," he answered lightly, and Kelsey touched his wrist as if to say, "Not now." "Resale," I repeated, setting my fork down. "We're having turkey." Later, when dishes were stacked like a city skyline and the house smelled like nutmeg and dish soap, Daniel kissed my cheek and said, "Mom, you know we love you." "I know you say you do," I replied, too tired to braid my words into something softer. He blinked, then laughed like people do when they don't want to be seen. Sometimes I walk to the cemetery with a thermos and talk to Michael, because the dead are good listeners and better truth-tellers. "They're drifting," I tell his stone, tracing the dates, 1957, 2011, cut into granite like a neat ending. Maybe I'm too hard. Maybe I hold the ledger too tight. Or maybe not hard enough. I imagine him saying, wry as ever, "Lines will hold," I tell the name. "But some lines, Michael, some lines are strangers now." "Mom, you worry too much," Daniel would say when I ventured a concern, always with the little neck rub. "Worry is a mother's way of doing math," I'd answer, and he'd roll his eyes like a boy, then change the subject. The mail started to act strange around then. One afternoon I received an envelope printed with a funeral home's logo, addressed to the estate of Evelyn Carter. I sat at the kitchen table and ran my thumb under the flap, thinking maybe it was a mistake, some bulk mailing error. Inside was a trifold brochure offering compassionate services and estate planning partnerships at a discount if I called within 30 days. I turned the paper over as if the back might explain the joke. I'm alive, I told the brochure, out loud to the empty room. I'm right here, Mom, Daniel called as he let himself in, Kelsey's perfume following like a flag. You okay? I'm reading about my estate, I said dryly, handing him the letter. Apparently I died and forgot to tell you. Kelsey laughed, too quickly, a beat off. Bulk mail, she said, lifting the paper with 2 fingers as if it might smudge her. Ignore it. I usually do, I said. But lately the mail seems to know something I don't. At the hospital laundry, the girls asked about the kids during break. Styrofoam cups steaming, the room filling with talk the way it fills with lint. They're fine, I said. Busy. Busy is code for far, Dolores said, sipping her tea. Far is code for safe, I replied, and we both smiled because we were old enough to speak in maps. There were good days, of course. Days when Lena would send a photo of the lake at dawn and write, "Wish you were here." And I'd text back a picture of the maple with birds like musical notes in its branches. Days when Daniel would fix a hinge or move a box, and we'd eat grilled cheese on the porch, and he'd look like the boy who counted ants on the sidewalk and asked if they had tiny funerals. You were tender, I would tell him, remembering. You cried when the cartoon rabbit got left behind. Mom, he'd say, embarrassed and soft. Don't tell Kelsey. I won't, I promised, sealing sweetness in a jar. But friction has a way of making a sound, even when you pretend it doesn't. Kelsey's jokes about old people houses sharpened to comments about maximizing assets. Daniel's small asks laced themselves into patterns. This week a loan, next week a signature. It's just paperwork, he'd say, breezy, like you say about a thunderstorm before the wind makes up its mind. Paperwork is where wars are fought, I told him, tapping the table. Mom, he sighed, a man suddenly too weary for the woman who taught him how to tie his shoes. In the living room, the photo wall told a kinder story. Lena with gap teeth and a blue ribbon, Daniel in a cardboard crown on his 6th birthday, Michael lifting a baby into the air so high, you wonder how the child didn't touch the ceiling. Sometimes I stand there and look until the glass blurs, and I have to wipe it with the hem of my sleeve. We built this, I tell the frames. We built this with casseroles and mortgages. Do you ever get lonely? Lena asked once, the question arriving unannounced between her meetings and my laundry basket. Lonely is not the same as alone, I said, and meant it, though the difference was thinner on some days than others. The house keeps me company. Your father, in his way, does too. You're stronger than me, she said, and I wanted to tell her strength is not a virtue but a habit you can't quit. I didn't. I told her to buy good boots for the winter. Thanksgiving came again. I made the same pies I always make because ritual is a spine. The realtor cousin made the same smile he always makes, because a wolf is a wolf even when it brings wine. Did you ever get your house tested for lead? He asked again, casual as salt. Are you asking about my blood or my walls? I said, meeting his eyes. Just thinking long-term value, he replied, and Daniel laughed the way people laugh when they think a conversation is above them. Long-term value, I repeated, folding my napkin into triangles. I measure that by shade in August and the sound of a fan in June. Later, after the dishes and the goodbye hugs that always feel like receipts, I stood at Michael's stone and told him the whole meal. The jokes, the glances, the cousin's thin question. Am I paranoid? I asked, and a crow answered like a slammed door. Am I crazy? I asked the wind, and it pulled at my scarf as if to say, keep your neck warm. I'm here. I told the ground. I'm alive. And then I went home and checked the hope chest, counted the papers, touched the union pin and whispered, lines will hold. There are stories you tell yourself so you can sleep. The children are just stressed. The jokes are just jokes. The mail is just mail. And then there are the stories the house tells. If you listen, Footsteps at hours that aren't yours. Voices in the vent carrying words like deed and guardianship and appraisal. I pressed my palm to the warm curve of the dryer one night and said, "Not yet. Not me. Not this house. Mom," Daniel called from the porch, keys jangling. "You awake?" "I'm always awake," I said, unlocking the door, and the maple scratched the window like a warning written in bark. "You keep misplacing things, Evelyn." Kelsey said it while standing in my kitchen like a volunteer in someone else's garden. Hands on hips, eyes scanning for weeds. She lifted the salt cellar, set it down 1 inch to the left, and smiled without showing her teeth. "It happens," she added as if she were patting a child's head and not rearranging my life in centimeters. "I'm not misplacing," I said, reaching for the spice drawer. "I'm placing." "Doctor says memory slips at your age are normal," Daniel chimed from the doorway, rubbing the back of his neck the way he always does when he's saying something that needs extra help, pretending to be harmless. "What doctor?" I asked, turning to face him. "What doctor, Daniel? Because you haven't taken me to any doctor." He looked at the floor. Kelsey looked at me. Silence looked at all three of us. I told myself to keep my temper folded like a good towel. Instead, I opened the freezer and pretended to check on a roast I didn't own. The cold bit my cheeks. Outside, the maple tapped the window with one leaf like a drummer counting time. "Mom," Daniel said at last, a sigh wearing a man's voice. "We're trying to help." "Helping," I repeated, closing the freezer. "Helping is bringing soup. Helping is raking leaves. Helping is not accusing me of misplacing my own mind." He laughed a little, like a pebble accidentally kicked into traffic. "No one said—" "She said—" I cut in, nodding at Kelsey. "She said?" Kelsey shrugged, palms up as if she were empty-handed. "I just mean, it's easy to lose track of things. Receipts, jewelry, papers." "Papers," I echoed, and felt my chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with age. That night, when the house closed its eyes, I carried the hope chest onto the bed like a sleeping child and opened it. The deed was where it belonged, in a plastic sleeve labeled in thick black marker, the mortgage stamped "paid in full," birth certificates curled at the corners like they missed being babies. I exhaled, long, and touched Michael's union pin because metal is steady when people aren't. 2 nights later, I opened the chest again and found a stranger in my house. The deed copy I always keep on top, my copy, my handwriting, my sleeve, was gone. In its place was something that looked like a form printed from a website. Convenience deed. At the top, in blue blank spaces hungry for names. Someone had slipped it into the sleeve the way you slip a letter into a mailbox. Quickly, thoughtlessly, expecting it to leave without a sound. "Misplacing things, Evelyn?" Kelsey's voice from 2 days ago played back, bright as tinfoil. I sat on the edge of the bed, the form trembling in my hands. "No," I said to the air. "No, I am not misplacing. Someone is placing things where they do not belong." In the morning, I walked to the pharmacy because walking irons thoughts flat enough to read. The pharmacy smelled like mint, trying to be lemon, and lemon trying to be clean. "I'd like a printout of my last 3 months," I told the clerk, a young man who looked like he would apologize if the sun rose 2 minutes late. "Of your medication history?" he asked, hands already moving. "Yes," I said. "And the charges. I'm old-fashioned. I like paper." He printed. I paid. At the end of the counter was a rack of pamphlets. Diabetes, shingles, hospice. I reached for the hospice leaflet because it was the one facing me. The way you sometimes pick a song because it's already playing. On the back, a small joke. Addressed to the estate of Evelyn Carter. I swallowed and set it down very carefully, as if it were a hot pan. "Everything okay?" the clerk asked, kind in the way young people can be when they aren't afraid of their own mothers. Everything is numbers, I said, tapping the printout. We'll see if the numbers can tell a story. When I got home, I found Kelsey in my kitchen with the tea kettle in one hand and a bottle of vitamins in the other. Green tea is good for blood pressure, she said, dropping 2 caplets into a cup as if she was seasoning soup. I take my blood pressure pills at 9, I said, glancing at the bottle. It was my bottle. The label had my name. The seal had been peeled back and smoothed down again with someone else's thumb. Those are not mine. They're supplements, she chirped. Natural. I like my blood pressure to be unnatural, I said. Predictable. The kind controlled by lab coats. She laughed and nudged the cup toward me. Just try. You might feel calm. I lifted the cup and the steam smelled faintly metallic, like a penny hidden under mint leaves. I set it down. I'll wait until 9. Suit yourself, she said too quickly. Where do you want the spare house keys, by the way? I'll tidy the hook. My keys, I said. My hook. And then I smiled because I was afraid. And fear makes me polite. That evening I compared the pharmacy printout to my bank statement and found the first double shadow. Duplicate charges 1 week apart for the same prescription. Same dosage, same price, as if I had swallowed the pills and then swallowed the receipt. A month later, another twin. I circled them with a red pen that felt like a warning flare. Daniel, I said on the phone, keeping my voice wrapped in cotton. Can you explain this? I'll swing by later, he said, too breezy. We'll go over it. You'll bring Kelsey, I said. It wasn't a question. He paused. We're a team, Mom. Teams play games. I stared at the circles on the page. Not in my house, I said, and hung up because I needed the quiet more than his voice. That night, as the maple combed the wind with its fingers, I heard them whisper through the heat vent in the hall. Houses carry secrets like soups carry spices. Up, then over, then down. Kelsey's voice clipped. Friday. Daniel's. Lower. She'll sign. Kelsey again? Or we invoke guardianship? Guardianship, I whispered to the dark, tasting the syllables like cough syrup. God. Who guards the god? When fear wakes me, I clean. I took down the copper pan and scrubbed until the past came off in small brown commas. Around midnight, I went to the bedroom to fetch Michael's ring. The one he wore on a chain when his hands were too swollen to wear it proper. And couldn't find it. Not in the dish where I keep it. Not on the nail by the mirror. Not in the pocket of the apron I wore when I baked pies last Sunday. Misplacing things, Evelyn, Kelsey's voice sing-songed, slithering through the house like a draft. I emptied the trash because sometimes you put things somewhere for now, and your future self doesn't get the memo. Under a nest of tea bags and a sliver of onion skin, I found the ring. It had stuck to the gluey corner of a cereal box top, as if someone had palmed it and then changed their mind at the last second. Beside it, pill blister packs cut open in a neat line like someone had decided to do surgery with craft scissors. I sat on the step stool and cried in the way old women cry when they've run out of the good, dignified tears, and only the practical ones are left, the kind that rinse your eyes so you can keep looking. Michael, I whispered, holding the ring. Michael, am I paranoid? Am I crazy? The next morning, my blood pressure was high enough to make the nurse at the clinic tilt her head. New stress? She asked, cuff deflating with a sound like the house exhaling. New vitamins, I said dryly, and she laughed without understanding. I started to hide things like a squirrel with winter coming. The union pin went under the false bottom of the sewing tin. The deed went into a sleeve inside a dictionary no one has touched since smartphones learned to spell. The spare keys went into a coffee can under the sink, because thieves never look where real people keep trash bags and steal wool. Kelsey announced a surprise field trip. I booked us a tour at Riverbend Care, she said at the door, smiling too wide. It's lovely. Sunroom, craft hour, no stairs. We just need a deposit to secure a room. A deposit? I repeated, drying my hands. How much is your love worth? Mom. Daniel chided, stepping behind her like a shadow learning to walk. Don't be like that. How much? I asked again. $25,000? Kelsey said, bright and brave, as if speaking the number quickly could make it normal. It's refundable if you change your mind in the first 2 weeks. 2 weeks, I said, as if I was learning a new language with only one cruel verb. We can help with the paperwork, Daniel added. Suddenly professional, suddenly rehearsed. He pulled a folder from his tote and slid a printed document across the table as if we were in a bank. A draft POA, power of attorney. Just in case, Lena agreed. I picked up the paper and read the words like a person reads a diagnosis. Mouth moving, mind refusing. Lena agreed? I asked, still looking down. Did she call me? Did she speak to me? We talked, he said. How? I asked, still calm. With which part of your mouth? He laughed, annoyed. That's not... Did she hear my voice? I asked. Because sometimes the thing people agree to is the version of their mother they carry around like a faded photograph, not the woman in front of them. He rubbed his neck. She said it was sensible. Sensible, I said, setting the paper down. Sensible like selling a coat in January, because you're not using it right this second. Kelsey sighed the long sigh of people who think patience is a tax they pay to the elderly. Evelyn, this is for your safety. Stairs are dangerous. You almost fell the other day? I stumbled, I said. It happens when a person is slapped. Silence again, thicker this time. You misunderstood, Kelsey said too fast. I was reaching for my face, I asked, tilting my head. You reached. Daniel put a hand on the back of a chair and pressed his lips together like a man holding shut a door he knows is about to blow. Please, Mom, let's not turn this into a fight. Let's turn it into what it already is, I said softly. A plan. That night I locked my bedroom door for the first time in 40 years. The key was small and cruel in my hand. The sound of the lock turning was a new kind of weather in the house. Strange, dry, full of static. I walked to the dresser, lifted Michael's photo and held it until my arm shook. He was 23 in that picture, cheeks wind-bitten, eyes laughing at something I said that was probably not all that funny. If I'm crazy, I whispered to him, let me be crazy enough to fight. The next morning I made tea and didn't drink it. I poured it down the sink and watched the amber swirl like a small river going somewhere it didn't want to go. I left the cup in the basin as evidence to myself. Then I walked to the pharmacy again with my printouts and my red pen and asked the clerk a question he would have to answer carefully. Can you tell me why I was charged twice for the same prescription? I slid the papers forward. Same day, same dosage, same me. He frowned and typed and frowned again. Looks like a refill was processed early, then reversed. But the charge didn't back out right away. He glanced up. Do you want me to ask the pharmacist to look at the bottle history? Please, I said. And can you humor me? Can you tell me if anyone else has picked up on my profile? A spouse, a proxy. I don't have a proxy, but maybe the system thinks I do. He hesitated. We need you to fill out a consent form for that level of info, ma'am. Bring me the form, I said. I like forms. They turn thoughts into evidence. He smiled, then bit it back, because my eyes had started to water and no boy wants to see a woman his grandmother's age cry in front of the high-margin candy. On my way out, a hospice volunteer blocked my path with kindness. We offer planning sessions, she said, pressing a pamphlet into my hand. To the estate of Evelyn Carter, winked from the corner like a dare. It's never too early to... I'm early for everything, I said, handing it back, but not for this. At home, Daniel and Kelsey had already moved air around, as if their bodies were measuring tape. We'll just take a quick look at the basement, Kelsey said, eyes on the door like a realtor rehearsing. Moisture can be a liability. Liability. I repeated, heart in my throat. You speak like a person who plans to sue me for my own staircase. Mom, Daniel warned. Voice thin. Son. I answered, and the word was both knife and lullaby. That evening, I stood at the end of the driveway and called Lena. Gravel carried my whisper the way a church carries a hymn. Gently, inevitably, to the back row. Honey, I said when she picked up. Did you tell your brother it was sensible to get a power of attorney? Mom, she exhaled, and I heard the city around her. Horns, a laughing woman, something falling and not breaking. We talked in abstracts. I said if you ever wanted help with bills or a temporary, I said, clutching the phone. He says you agreed. I didn't agree to anything without you, she said, voice sharpening. Put him on. He's not here, I said. He is everywhere and not here. Do you want me to come? She asked. This weekend? I can try. Do not try, I said. Either come or don't. Do not try. Silence pressed its ear to both our mouths. Okay, she said finally. I'll come. After the call, I stayed in the driveway longer than a sensible woman stands under a purple sky. The maple whispered in a language that belongs to old trees and older women. I went inside, past the kitchen where a cup of metallic mint still sat in the sink, and sat on the bed behind the locked door. The next day, Kelsey texted me a link. Riverbend, care. Schedule your tour. The photos were all sunlight and angled throw blankets. A retirement dream smoothed within an inch of its life. Friday, 3 p.m.? She wrote. If we like it, we can wire the $25,000 to secure a room for 2 weeks while you transition. I typed and erased and typed again. No. Then. Not Friday. Then. I'm not transitioning. She responded with a thumbs up, which is the tiniest hand a person can raise to another person in need. In the afternoon, Daniel brought over a manila envelope. Just look these over, he said, not meeting my eyes. What am I looking at? I asked, laying each paper out like place settings. Guardianship guidelines, he said, clearing his throat. Insurance options. If you fall. If you forget. If I fall, I said, I will stand. If I forget, remind me. You are my son. He swallowed. Sometimes, we need to be parents to our parents. Then parent me, I said, and smiled, so he would see that love and rage can sit nice beside each other at the same table. Parent me by showing up. Parent me by fixing the gutter. Parent me by calling your sister and not lying about what she said. Do not parent me with paper. He looked at the maple through the window. The way men look at something they would rather not admit is beautiful. It's just a plan. It is a plan, I agreed, but not mine. That night I lay awake listening to the house breathe. In, out, in, out. The clock in the hall made a small sound that was not a tick, so much as a steady whisper. I am. My heart answered. I am. I wondered if they could hear me through the vent the way I heard them. I wondered if they were whispering Friday into their pillows like a promise they owed someone else. In the morning, the tea on the counter had stained the cup ring into a perfect O. I washed it carefully and put it on the highest shelf. Then I went to the bedroom, locked the door, and spread my papers on the quilt like a map. I didn't know the terrain yet, but I knew, suddenly and absolutely, that I would learn it, and that the first rule of traveling alone at my age is the same as it was at 22. Keep your money close, your name clear, your shoes by the door. Michael, I said to his picture, my voice steady now. If I'm crazy, then let it be the kind of crazy that can count. The kind that can read a receipt, circle a number, fold a copy, dial a phone. The house didn't answer. It didn't have to. The maple scratched the glass just once, like a pen making the first mark on a page that will not be blank again. Tom Rivera answered on the second ring, voice sanded down by years of weather and work. Evelyn, you all right? I need you to listen, I said, staring at the kitchen clock while the second hand stitched time into little silver dashes. And I need you not to say I'm paranoid. I never call a woman paranoid, he replied dry. I call her early. I told him about the duplicate charges, the convenience deed, the tea that tasted like a penny, and the word guardianship that traveled through the heat vent like a rumor with good shoes. When I finished, the rain took a breath, and Tom took another. Okay, he said. We don't guess. We gather. I did 30 years with the Postal Inspection Service. Fraud is just paperwork with ambition. You still have the clock in the kitchen? The one that looks like a pie tin, I said, glancing up. It ticks when it wants to. It's about to want to, he said. I'll be there in an hour. I set out cups because people who help ought to be met with something warm. When Tom came in out of the rain, he stomped twice on the mat the way Michael used to. He hugged me with one arm and put a small cardboard box on the table with the other. Don't panic, he said, opening it. Don't spy. Document. That's the difference. What is it? I asked, leaning close. A motion-activated camera, he said. $60 on sale, but I got one cheaper for the clock. Records to micro SD. You don't point it at people. You point it at your own property. The law smiles on prudence. The law smiles? I asked, and he grinned. Sometimes, he said, flipping the clock over. Especially when you hand it receipts. He worked like a man who understands hinges. Quietly, with respect. The little lens hid behind the rim where the tin flared. The battery tucked against the mechanism. The SD card clicked home with a mouse's sound. He set the clock back on the wall, straightened it with 2 fingers and stepped back. Now, he said, this is only part of a chain of custody matters. You'll keep a notebook. Date, time, what you saw, who was present. No embroidery. If we get anything ugly, we take it to a lawyer with a spine. I still mend uniforms for $10 a bag, I said, smiling despite myself. I can stitch a notebook straight. He nodded. And you need a local ally who moves faster than me when a cable goes down. Anybody trustworthy on the block? Maya? I said immediately. Across the street. 17 going on 40. Knows how to make the printer stop yelling. She set up my router and refused payment. Tom smiled. Teenagers are the best kind of locksmiths. Ask her to help save a voice memo. She'll give you a dissertation. I called Maya that afternoon and kept my voice small so I wouldn't scare her with the scale of what I needed. Honey, I've got a problem with my phone recording, I said. It swallows things. It doesn't swallow. It hides, she said, breezing in 20 minutes later with wet hair and a hoodie that said, Girls Code Harder. What did you lose? Not what, I said. Who? Their words. Okay, she said, popping gum like a metronome. Let's unlose them. We sat at the dining table, her laptop open like a metal book of spells. She taught me to speak softly and close to the phone so the mic feels important, to name files like a librarian, to back up everything twice. When she finished a tiny microphone test, she handed me a silver square, no bigger than a caramel. $30 online, she said. Clips to an apron or a cardigan. Records 4 hours. Charges on USB. Don't wear necklaces when you wear this or it'll jingle. You're an angel, I said. I'm bored, she corrected. And nosy. Which, around here, is a form of public service. That evening, Tom took me to the pharmacy and stood behind me like a pine tree while I asked for a full medication history printout. Every pickup, every reversal, every note, I said, sliding my ID across the counter. Of course, the pharmacist said, calm as a doctor on a soap opera. Do you want us to print the audit trail? Please, Tom said. And could you include dispensing initials? She'll need those. Back home at the kitchen table, we laid the pharmacy printouts next to my pill organizer, like 2 suspects at a lineup. Look here, Tom said, tapping with a pencil. Reversal entries don't match charges, and you've got an early fill logged under a family pickup note. Whose family? I am, I said. I'm the family. He looked up. Anybody else ever pick these up for you? No, I said, unless I was dead and didn't notice. He made a small sound that could have been a laugh or a curse. Now compare lot numbers to what's in your organizer. Not tonight, in good light. We want calm eyes. I nodded. Calm eyes, steady hands, sharp needle. The next morning, a letter waited in my mailbox with a return address from Riverbend Care. Addressed to me, which made it mine to open. And the law likes when you only open what belongs to you. Inside, a friendly welcome, some brochure language in a font that thought it was gentle, and a separate sheet with wire transfer instructions for $25,000 to secure a priority intake within 2 weeks. At the bottom, a form with boxes checked, and a line that made my mouth go dry. Medical proxy, Daniel Carter. The signature above my printed name was not mine. It got my E right, and everything else wrong. Tail too short on the Y, a loop where I always make a line. The date was Friday. The note said, please bring original identification and keys. Keys. I put everything back in the envelope the way you place a baby in its crib. Then I walked to the bank and asked to speak to someone who knows the difference between a courtesy and a crime. Of course, the teller said, ushering me into an office where the carpet tried to look expensive. What can I do for you, Miss Carter? I need a printout of any attempts to add a joint owner to my checking, I said, sitting very straight. And any notes about proxy access. I have none. If your screen says otherwise, your screen is a liar. Her eyebrows lifted like 2 birds. Let me take a look. She typed, frowned, then printed. On the page, a note of an attempted joint account add-on last Tuesday at 11:43 a.m. Then a system message, incomplete, awaiting customer confirmation. Under contact email, an address I did not know that ended with starlightrealty.com, the realtor cousin's domain. A second email I knew too well, Kelsey's. The field for phone confirmation completed read, no. Who has access to request this? I asked, folding the printout and sliding it into my purse. Anyone with your basic info could initiate an inquiry, she said carefully. But it can't be completed without you here. I'm here, I said. Consider me completed. On the way home, I stopped at the county clerk's office, the kind of place that smells like paper, warmed by old computers. Public terminals are on the left, the clerk said, handing me a login with a smile I trusted because it had crow's feet. What are you looking for? Me, I said. I'm looking for myself. The public search fields blinked patiently. I typed my name, the parcel number from the tax bill, and a prayer. Up came a list of recorded documents. Deed, mortgage, satisfactions. Nothing recent. But in another tab, one for downloadable forms, a pre-filled quit-claim deed flashed with my name in the grantor slot. The metadata showed it had been generated from a template account, linked to Starlight Realty, time-stamped Monday 4:12 p.m. Not filed. Not signed. Ready. Need help printing? The clerk asked, passing behind me. I need help stopping Tuesday from becoming Friday, I said, hitting print. Back in my kitchen, Tom stood at the sink rinsing a glass. We're going to speak softly and carry a flash drive, he said, fishing a USB from his pocket. We add only what matters. No theater. We pulled the micro SD from the clock and slipped it into an adapter like a wafer into a tiny silver monstrance. Tom loaded it on his laptop. The file list was bare dates. We opened Thursday evening. At first, nothing. My kitchen doing what kitchens do. Existing, remembering, waiting, then movement. Kelsey, alone, hair up, opening my pill cabinet with a practiced wrist. She lifted my bottle, squinted and set it down. From her purse she took a twin bottle with a label that matched mine in font and color, but not in pharmacy cereal. She twisted, shook 2 tablets into her palm, then poured them into my bottle. Next, she took 2 of mine and poured them into hers. A shell game. Identical shapes, identical sheen. She snapped the cap on, smoothed the seal with a thumbnail, put it back, and whispered like a woman talking to a misbehaving child. No drowsy ones tonight. Friday she needs to be up. Tom paused the video. I pressed my palm against my mouth and tasted salt. We copy, he said, not unkindly. We don't label. We let the facts wear their own clothes. We saved the clip with a timestamp and a file hash. We printed a still frame with Kelsey's ring catching the overhead light. Tom wrote, Exhibit A, medication tampering in block letters on the envelope, and nodded at the notebook I'd started. Date, time, action. I added the line, Thursday 7:12 p.m. Kay enters kitchen alone. Swaps tablets. Whisperee, Friday. Now audio. Maya said from the doorway, as if the house had texted her. I brought a cable. She plugged my phone into her laptop and dove into a folder that looked like a forest. Only she could navigate. Found deleted voice memos, she said after a minute. They weren't erased, just dereferenced. Who did the erasing? I don't know, I said. People who sit on my couch and rearrange my salt. She clicked a file, and we heard Daniel's voice, flattened by proximity, practicing lines as if for a play. Mom, it's for your safety. Mom, the stairs aren't safe. Mom, if you love me, you'll sign. Mom. He laughed then, not happy laughter. Rehearsal laughter. Too much? Too much, Kelsey's voice said in the background. Say, Lena agreed. People trust sisters. Maya stopped the clip and looked at me, eyes hot. Do you want to press charges now or later? Later, Tom said. We get a lawyer first. A good one. Someone with lemon candy, I said without thinking. I trust lawyers who keep lemon candy in glass jars. Tom raised an eyebrow. You know who I'm thinking of? Patel, I said. Probate and elder law. She helped Dolores at the laundry when her son tried to sign over her car with an X. Good, he said. Call her. Say my name. Not because it matters, but because it'll make you feel like a person with a gait. At Patel and Finch, the reception area smelled faintly of printer ink and lemon. A glass jar of lemon candy sat on the coffee table like a small sun. Attorney Patel shook my hand with both of hers and sat me down in a room with a table wide enough to hold a life. Tell me everything, she said. Legal pad ready, I told her. When I finished, she tapped the pen against her chin slowly. We're going to do 3 things, she said. 1, preemptive filing. We'll lodge a notice challenging any guardianship attempt and asserting your capacity, supported by your physician's letter. 2, temporary protective order. We'll seek to restrict access by any individual suspected of exploitation. 3. We'll assemble your evidence chain cleanly and make sure nothing gets tainted by enthusiasm. Enthusiasm taints? I asked. Always, she said, smiling. It's a cousin of panic. She slid a yellow legal pad toward me. Dates I need. When your son and daughter-in-law first suggested Riverbend, when the duplicate pharmacy charges started, when you saw the convenience deed, and names, the bank teller, the pharmacist, anyone in the clerk's office who spoke to you. Do we tell them? I asked. Do we tell Daniel and Kelsey we're doing this? We tell the court, she said. We tell the police if we must. We do not tell the people whose story we are correcting. Tom placed the Saktyaspurn on the table. Patel didn't touch it, not yet. Chain of custody, she said. Tell me where this has been. Clock, Tom said. Then my pocket, in this envelope. Then here. Patel nodded and slipped it into a plastic sleeve, wrote down the time, had me initial. If we ever show this in court, she said, I want to be able to tell the judge what brand of dust was on it. She sent a paralegal to the pharmacy with a HIPAA authorization form to get the medication audit directly, so the store couldn't say I misunderstood. She drafted an affidavit for me to sign that read like a weather report. Calm, precise, with dates instead of thunder. Then she made a call I couldn't quite hear, listened, and hung up. A private investigator will start following the realtor cousin tomorrow, she said. We don't need his hobbies. We need his meetings, cash offers, notarizations, any contact with Riverbend or your bank. If we find a notary appointment set for Friday, 3:30 p.m., we move sooner. I swallowed. Friday, I said, the word starting to taste like a nail. On the way home, Tom stopped at the library so I could use a quiet computer away from my kitchen to check emails. In my inbox sat a message from Riverbend Admissions. Confirming Friday tour. Please bring ID, insurance cards, and keys so we can copy. Keys again, as if the metal itself had a schedule. Attached. An intake form that listed my medical proxy as Daniel and my alternate as Kelsey. The signature block showed a scrawl that tried to be mine. It wasn't. At the bottom, a polite P.S. Wire routing attached for your convenience. I printed everything. At the self-serve station, 2 boys were fighting over a stapler like it was the last lifesaver on a boat. Ladies first, one said, and handed it to me with a flourish. I stapled the admissions email to the wire instructions, then stapled my fear to my resolve, quietly, inside my chest. At home, I found an envelope from Midwest Mutual. Michael's small life insurance had a rider that still listed me as a beneficiary on an annuity trickling like a stubborn faucet. The letter's tone was neutral the way a robber holds a door. Please confirm the requested beneficiary change. The new primary? Daniel. The witness signature line bore a name I recognized only from holiday cards. The realtor cousin. The signature above my printed name tried again to fake my hand. It had learned the tale of the Y. It still missed the weight of the end. Tom took out a magnifier and laid it over the strokes. People think signatures are drawings, he said. They're dances. They forget the footwork. We made copies. Patel added the annuity letter to a new folder she labeled Insurance. Attempted change. She said words like forgery, fraud, and exploitation. Quietly, as if speaking them too loudly might attract more. Deadlines matter, she said, tapping her calendar. We've got a Friday deed signing to interrupt and a 2-week deposit to trip. We'll file the preemptive petition tomorrow morning. We'll add an emergency motion if the PI confirms the notary booking. What do I do? I asked, hands clasped tight enough to turn my knuckles into bones on a teaching chart. You live, she said. You document. You don't drink anything someone else brings you. You call me if you feel faint. You keep that micro recorder in your cardigan like rosary beads. and you go to public places when they insist on private conversations. Lobbies are your friends. Lobbies, I repeated, thinking of hospital coffee and vinyl chairs. I can do lobbies. Maya came by with a bag of gummy bears she pretended were for me. I scrubbed the audio, she said, chewing. I can't improve content, but I can raise volume and remove hum. The Daniel rehearsal is crystal now. Crystal is for vases, I said. This is for court, she snorted. Same thing, different flowers. We spent a day in the kitchen turning my life into exhibits. Exhibit A, Kelsey's pill swap. Exhibit B, Daniel's rehearsal audio. Exhibit C, Riverbend wire instructions with the forged medical proxy. Exhibit D, bank attempted joint add-on with Kelsey's email and the realtor cousin's address. Exhibit E, county terminal print showing the pre-filled quit-claim deed and the notary booking. Friday, 3:30 p.m. Exhibit F, Midwest. Mutual beneficiary change request with the signature that fails at being me. Every time I wrote exhibit, I felt less like a suspect and more like a seamstress basting a hem before the real stitches hold. Sharp needle. Slow hand. No blood. Remember, Tom said, flipping one still frame over to write the time. We're not making a movie. We're making a map. That evening, Daniel arrived with a smile he used to wear on Halloween when he wanted a second round of candy. Mom, he said, stepping in without knocking. How about we go to Riverbend together tomorrow? It'll make you feel better to see it. Feel better, I repeated, touching the recorder clipped under my cardigan. About which part? The sunroom or the wire transfer? He blinked. What wire transfer? The $25,000 you think my savings are going to do for your deposit, I said, leaning on the counter. He laughed like a man who has not been introduced to a new fact yet. You're making it sound like theft? I offered. Like lies? Like the word guardianship whispered into a vent at midnight? He rubbed his neck. Mom, don't be dramatic. It's for your safety. Maya, who had come to borrow sugar at exactly the right time, coughed softly in the doorway. I let the silence be the sugar. Where's Kelsey? I asked. At work, he said. We're closing a deal Friday and... Friday, I said. At 3:30? His eyes flicked left. A small bird startled. What? Nothing, I said, tasting the word like cinnamon. Bring her by later, will you? I'd like to talk about vitamins. He left soon after, and the house let go of a breath it had been holding. The P.I., a woman named Greer, whose voice sounded like good gravel, called Patel the next morning. Your realtor cousin met with a notary at the Starlight office last Friday, she reported. Booked another for this Friday, 3:30 p.m., confirmed by text. I've got screenshots. They plan to finalize deed. He also met a cash buyer at a coffee shop. Conversation included the phrase, old lady place. Old lady place, I said when Patel relayed it. That's me. That's you, Patel agreed. And you're not going anywhere without a judge's signature and 3 forms of ID. Do I bring the clock? I asked, and she laughed for the first time since we met. At the pharmacy back office, the manager, a woman with tight curls and tighter policies, reviewed the audit with Patel's paralegal. Looks like someone picked up a fill early under a family note, she said, finger tapping the screen. And there are unusual reversals tied to a second customer number that shares an address with Ms. Carter's account. That shouldn't happen. Who signed? The paralegal asked. The manager scrolled. Initials KC on the family pickup note. KC, I said, hearing Kelsey Carter pronounced by a computer that could neither lie nor blush. We added the pharmacy manager's printouts to the folder. Patel wrote affidavit, pharmacy at the top, and had the paralegal flag it for the judge. At the bank lobby, I asked the teller, whose name tag read Ruth, to attach a note to my account. No changes without in-person ID and password phrase, maple shade. Ruth nodded solemnly, typed it in, and handed me a printout of the alert. I named it after my tree, I said. She smiled. My mama named ours the Sentinel. Trees make good passwords. At the library computer, I wrote a list titled, People to Tell When This Is Over. Dolores at the laundry, the hospice volunteer who means well, the boys with the stapler, Michael Stone. I added Lena and underlined it twice. Come on Sunday, I texted her, adding a picture of the maple mantled in late light. We'll have tea and tell the truth. Tell the truth, she replied. I'm on a plane Saturday. Tom dropped by with a pocket scale and a joke. Weigh the pills, he said, setting a teaspoon on the counter. OTC generics sometimes vary a hair. Prescription lots are tighter. If the weights flirt, we make a note. Flirt? I asked, laughing despite the storm. You make everything sound like a barn dance. Fraud's just a man stepping on your toes and saying he was trying to lead, he said. I sat that night at the table with my notebook and made my handwriting behave. Tuesday, 9:40 a.m. Bank confirms attempted joint add-on. Emails. Kelsey plus Realtor. Wednesday, 11:10 a.m. County Terminal shows pre-filled quitclaim deed. Notary Friday, 3:30 p.m. Thursday, 7:12 p.m. Kitchen cam. K swaps meds. Whispers about Friday. Friday, 2:05 p.m. Riverbend letter. Wire instructions. Forged medical proxy, Daniel. 2-week deposit. Saturday noon. Insurance letter. Beneficiary change request. Forged signature. Witness realtor cousin. I wrote chain at the top of the page and drew arrows. Not art. Map. Do you feel crazy? I asked Michael's picture, feeling anything but. Because I feel awake. The house didn't answer. The clock did. The second hand made its small, steady dashes, and the lens behind the rim looked at my kitchen the way truth looks at a person who finally sits still, long enough to be seen. Tomorrow, Patel said on the phone, her voice all business. We file at 8 sharp. If Daniel or Kelsey push, you meet them in the hospital lobby at noon. Public, cameras, social workers, clip the recorder. Ask them kindly why Friday means so much. If they sing, we record the chorus. If they don't, we hum louder. What if I faint? I asked, half a joke. Then you faint in a building full of nurses, she said. But you won't faint. You're sharp as a sewing needle. After we hung up, I put the micro recorder in my cardigan pocket and held the kitchen clock in my hands. You used to just tell me when to take the roast out, I told it. Now you tell me when to live. At dawn, the maple cut the morning into green ribbons. I stood at the sink and watched them flicker on the counter. My tea tasted like tea again. I threw out the vitamins Kelsey left and wrote trash next to the time. I locked my bedroom door. I took a lemon candy from the jar Patel had given me like a benediction and tucked it into my purse next to the USB. The letters, the printouts, the still frames. I was not going to war. I was going to the bank, the clerk's office, the lawyer's desk, the pharmacy, the library, and the hospital lobby. I was going to my life with a pen. Tom! I called as he stepped onto the porch to go, raincoat slung over his arm. Why do people do this to the old? He looked at the maple as if it were testifying. Because they think you're soft wood, he said. Because you make it look easy to shade them. I am soft in places, I said, feeling the bruise on my cheek where a slap had tried to rename me. But my rings run deep. Good, he said, and tipped 2 fingers at his temple like a salute. Let's show them the count. I chose the hospital because lobbies are truth's living rooms. Cameras, witnesses, nurses, who can smell a lie the way they smell fever. I wore my good cardigan, the one with pockets deep enough for a recorder and a lemon candy, and walked in steady, steady, steady. Then I set my purse on the arm of a vinyl chair, let my knees soften, and let the world tilt just enough to look like a faint. Ma'am? The volunteer at the desk stood. Do you need... I'm a little lightheaded, I said, sinking into the chair as if it had always been mine. "Would you mind calling my son? He worries." I gave Daniel's number and folded my hands so they wouldn't perform my fear for the cameras. While I waited, I pressed the micro recorder in my pocket. One click, red dot, warm against my palm. Tom drifted from the gift shop with a magazine he didn't buy and leaned against a pillar like a man who trusts architecture. We didn't look at each other. We looked like a woman and a stranger who both preferred the lobby to the rain. Daniel arrived first, breathless, neck already under his own hand. "Mom, what happened?" he said too loudly. The way people perform concern when the audience is bigger than they expected. "Sit," I said mildly. "Let's catch our breath together." Kelsey came next, heels sharp on tile, ponytail tightened for battle. She knelt beside me, eyes raking my face like a scanner. "You scared us," she said, squeezing my forearm with a tenderness that hurt. "I'm fine," I said. "And since we're all here and the cameras are so kind, tell me again why Friday is so important." "What?" Daniel said, blinking. "Mom, Friday," I repeated, letting the sound settle over us. "Why must we hurry to Friday?" Kelsey's mouth moved before her mind caught it. "Because the buyer holds the lock until month end," she said, crisp, professional, automatic. Then she heard herself and stood up too fast. "I mean, because admissions at Riverbend reset." "The buyer," I said softly, "holds the lock." Tom stepped forward as if the building had called his name. "Miss Carter," he said to me, not looking at them, "I believe the hospital social worker can help you decide what's safe." A woman with a clipboard appeared, as if summoned by the word safe. "I'm Teresa," she said, kneeling so her eyes were level with mine. "Can I sit?" "Please," I said. "I've been told I'm confused. I'd like a second opinion." Kelsey laughed too brightly. "She's been declining," she said to the social worker. "It's not safe for her to live alone." "I'm a lineman's widow," I replied, smiling for the camera in the ceiling. "Safety is my first language." Teresa glanced at Daniel. "Sir?" "We just want what's best," he said, and his mouth shook like he'd rehearsed it in a mirror, and the mirror had finally answered back. I opened my purse and took out Attorney Patel's letter, the one with my name, the case caption, and 3 paragraphs with more spine than some men. "I've retained counsel," I said, handing it to Teresa. "She asked me to give this to a hospital social worker if I ever felt pressured." Teresa read it. Her eyebrows climbed and came down in a neat line of duty. "I'm going to ask security to join us," she said gently, "just to make sure everyone feels safe." Kelsey's smile thinned. "Is that necessary?" "It is prudent," Teresa said, and I loved her like a daughter for using that word in a lobby. Security arrived in navy sweaters and patients. I gave them the USB Tom had warmed in his pocket the way people warm stones they know they'll throw. "There's a short audio file," I said. 2 minutes. I'd appreciate if you'd listen." We moved to the side desk where laminated signs about fall risks stood like small soldiers. The guard plugged the drive into a terminal. The lobby's noise fell away. Even the coffee machine seemed to hold its breath. Kelsey's voice filled the speakers, tinny from Maya's cleanup but sharp as a blade. "Get her to sign or we go guardianship." Daniel's voice followed, practice soft. "Mom, it's for your safety." You could hear their kitchen table rehearsal, the elbow grease they'd put on manipulation. Polish until it gleams. Pretend it's love. Kelsey reached for the plug. "This is out of context," she snapped. "Context is a courtroom," Tom said, not looking at her. "This is a lobby." Teresa turned to me. "Do you feel safe leaving with them?" she asked. "I feel safe with sunlight and paperwork," I said. "And I feel safer when the words people say to me in private are heard in public." Daniel sat down hard, like a boy who found the floor more honest than his posture. "Mom," he whispered, and for a flicker he sounded 6 again, crown sliding over one eye. "Don't do this." "Don't do what?" I asked. "Don't protect the house? Don't protect the woman who paid the last $8,300 when your father died? Don't protect the maple you climbed until you learned gravity by name?" Teresa cleared her throat. "Miss Carter," she said, "we can document that you're alert and oriented and that you have counsel. If anyone attempts to transport you against your will, we will call the police." Kelsey smiled at Teresa. Small, cold, professional. "That won't be necessary," she said. "We were just leaving." "You were," I said. "I'm staying." Tom sat 2 chairs away and read a magazine upside down. He looked like a man killing time in a lobby. He looked like a friend who would go to court if the word Friday turned into a gavel. They filed for guardianship on Tuesday morning. Patel filed a preemptive challenge at 8 sharp, as promised. Thursday afternoon, we sat on oak benches that smelled of paste and patience. The courtroom had microphones shaped like small black flowers that drink truth if you pour it slow enough. Kelsey's affidavit was a collage of practiced phrases. Confusion, unsafe living, wandering, stairs. She'd glued together the words people used to corral the old into pens. Daniel signed his name beneath it, a man swearing to a story with a pen he didn't earn. When our case was called, I stood because I was taught to stand when judges entered, and when truth tried to. My hands shook. My voice did not. "Miss Carter is oriented to person, place, time, and purpose," Teresa's hospital note said, entered into the record with the same grace she'd shown in the lobby. "She has counsel and a plan for safety." Patel rose in a navy suit that fit like a sentence well made. "Your Honor," she began, sliding a binder toward the clerk. "This petition paints confusion where there is calculation. We will show a chain of events that begins with financial irregularities and escalates to forgery and medication tampering." Kelsey sat at her table, hands folded church neat. Daniel couldn't figure out where to rest his eyes. The realtor cousin was absent, a ghost who left footprints. "Exhibit A," Patel said, and the screen lit with a still from the kitchen camera. Kelsey's ring hand over my pill bottle, the identical OTC twin like a stand-in waiting in the wings. "We lay a foundation for the recording," Patel continued, voice clean. "Device installed on Ms. Carter's property. Continuous capture. SD card transfer documented with chain of custody. The clip is time-stamped and unaltered. The clip played for the judge. No drowsy ones tonight." Kelsey's whisper filled the room, obscene in its intimacy. "A Friday she needs to be up." Kelsey's attorney rose. "Speculation about intent," she said quickly. "Perhaps she was sorting." "Sorting requires permission," Patel said, not looking over. "And medical advice. There was neither." "Exhibit B," Patel continued, and Maya's cleaned audio of Daniel's rehearsal came through the speakers. "Mom, it's for your safety. Say Lena agreed. People trust sisters." "Out of context," Kelsey's attorney repeated. "Thinner now. The context," Patel said, "is a petition to seize control from a competent adult and her paid-off home of 33 years. Exhibit C, and the pharmacy logs appeared. Duplicate charges, early fills under family pickup notes, reversals that did not properly credit. The pharmacy manager's affidavit scrolled with her neat initials beneath the key entries. KC. Lot numbers do not match pills found in Ms. Carter's organizer, Patel said. A variance beyond normal weight suggests substitution. The store confirms unusual activity tied to a secondary. Customer number sharing Ms. Carter's. Address. Exhibit D. And the county. Terminal print. The pre-filled quitclaim. Deed with my name already slotted as grantor. Metadata traced to Starlight Realty. Time stamped Monday, 8 p.m. Plus the notary appointment for Friday, 3:30 p.m. The cousins' PI documented meetings include a cash offer from a house flipper, Patel added, sliding Greer's report across to the clerk. Exhibit E. The banknote. Attempted joint add-on. Kelsey's email. Starlight domain. Incomplete. Awaiting customer confirmation. The teller's nameplate, Ruth, looked like a lighthouse. At the bottom of the page. Exhibit F. The insurance. Beneficiary change request mailed to me for confirmation. With my signature forged. Badly the first time and better the second, but never like mine. Tom's comparison chart lay next to it. Arrows marking the dance of my pen. Long Y tail, heavy N, no loop on the R. People forge drawings, Tom had said. They forget choreography. Your Honor, Patel finished. Taken together, these exhibits speak more clearly than I can. A Friday deadline to transfer a deed. A 2-week deadline to secure a $25,000 deposit. A plan to declare Ms. Carter incompetent long enough to carry her keys to a bank. The judge turned to Kelsey. Counsel? Kelsey's lawyer asked the court to see me as fragile fruit. Bruised by time, sweet enough to mash into jam. My client, she said, has only ever intended safety for her mother-in-law. She observed confusion. She observed unsteadiness. She observed? Patel said, eyebrow lifting. Or manufactured? We have a recording of her altering medications. Kelsey rose finally, because pride will not sit forever. She gets dizzy, she said, voice tight. She misplaces things. I misplace patience, I said calmly into my microphone. Not papers. The only time my deed was misplaced was when someone placed a convenience deed in its sleeve, like a snake in a drawer. The judge looked at me. Miss Carter, do you wish to speak? I stood. My hands shook, so I put them on the table where everyone could see them, and the shaking could be an honesty instead of a weakness. You told me I was confused, I said, eyes on Daniel, then Kelsey, then back to Daniel. You told me I was worthless, worthless, worthless. The word echoed in the wood like a hammer. But I took care of you when you were small. I held your head when you were sick. I bought shoes with double knots so you could run without falling. I paid the last $8,300 on this house by folding uniforms with wet fingers until the skin on my thumbs cracked and bled. I planted a maple when you were 6 car, Daniel, and you named the squirrel who lived in it Button. Do you remember? You do. You do. Silence filled the room like water rising in a tub. Kelsey's jaw worked. This is drama, she said. This is manipulation. Patel clicked one more file. Exhibit G, she said, and Kelsey's own words unfurled from the kitchen cam's second clip. Once the deed's done, the old maple's gone first. Roots too close to the foundation. Daniel's mutter followed, weary and mean. It's not like she'll last in Riverbend more than a year. The judge did not look at the screen. He looked at Kelsey and Daniel and then at me. He looked at the clock on the wall. Time had a witness, Chair. I am prepared to rule, he said, voice even. Kelsey's attorney stood. Your Honor, we request. Denied, he said, and the word landed like a door shutting gently, mercifully. Finally, the petition for guardianship is denied. The court finds no credible evidence of incapacity. The record instead reflects a concerning pattern of attempted financial exploitation and interference with prescribed medication. He turned to Patel. Counsel, I am referring these materials to the county prosecutor for review. I am also granting Ms. Carter's request for a temporary protective order. Petitioners are to have no unsupervised contact with Ms. Carter, no access to her residence, no authority to request records, and no attempts to transact in her name. Any attempt to transfer title or funds without her notarized consent will be considered contempt. Do you understand? I understand, Patel said, and I heard the softest exhale from Tom behind me, the kind of breath a man takes when a line holds through a storm. The judge looked at Daniel. Do you understand? Daniel nodded, eyes shiny. Yes, Your Honor. Kelsey stared at the table as if there were a trap door that would deliver her from the room. Bailiff, the judge said. "Please escort Miss Carter safely to the corridor. Arrange for officers to take statements regarding the alleged forgery and medication tampering. And someone find the cousin. He appears to be camera shy." The rest moved quickly, as judgment days do once they're decided. A deputy approached Kelsey. "Ma'am, we'd like to ask you some questions," he said. Voice the kind you use when you're carrying both authority and a hand open enough to catch a confession. "Am I under arrest?" she snapped. "You are being detained for questioning," he said, the way rain says wet. "Please come with us." The corridor outside the courtroom had that paparazzi feeling without cameras. Air thinned by sudden attention, footsteps quick, whispers leaping from mouth to ear. Someone from the local paper asked Teresa if the hospital had a statement about elder exploitation. She gave them the policy and kept my name wrapped up safe. Greer, the PI, handed a detective an envelope and a nod. "Coffee shop table, cash offer, notary text," she said. "Enjoy." Daniel approached me near the water fountain. He looked 10 years old and older than me, both at once. "Mom," he said, voice breaking. "I'm sorry." "For which part?" I asked. "The practice speech? The $25,000 wire? The tree? All of it?" He whispered, rubbing the back of his neck until the skin went white. "Kelsey said, I thought, we're drowning, Mom. We're drowning." "You brought me a bucket," I said, "and asked me to pour my house into your boat." He flinched. "I don't know how to fix this." "You begin," I said, "by not touching my keys, by not touching my pills, by not touching my name." He cried then, messy and real, and I had to hold the banister with both hands to keep from doing what mothers do. "Soften. You can be my son," I said. "But you cannot be my guardian." He nodded, which is a small miracle when a man is full of excuses. "I'll tell them everything," he said, glancing toward the door where Kelsey was giving 2 officers a lesson in deflection. "I'll tell them about the cousin, about the plan, about Friday." "Good," I said. "Tell the truth. It's lighter than whatever you've been carrying." Tom came up beside me and pretended to study the evacuation route map. "You did fine," he murmured. "I shook," I said. "Needles shake," he answered. "Stitches hold." Outside, on the courthouse steps, the rain had decided to stop being undecided. The pavement shone like a new fact. Patel stood with her folder against her hip like a small shield, and watched Kelsey led toward an unmarked sedan, talking fast, hands cutting the air into rectangles, as if she could frame herself out of the picture. Our realtor cousin ghosted down the side stairs, a man fleeing his own shadow, and disappeared into the kind of car you buy when you want to be noticed by no one you owe. A reporter asked me, "Ma'am, what would you say to other seniors who feel pressured by family?" The microphone looked like a flower someone had plucked too soon. I thought of the kitchen clock, the maple, the boys with the stapler, Teresa's steady voice, Tom's invisible hand, Maya's bright eyes, Patel's lemon candy. I thought of the word Friday, and how small it looked now that the judge had said denied. "I would say," I answered, "that old age is not confusion. It is accumulation. We have more days than you, not fewer. We know how to count. We know what things cost. We know what love costs. And we know what it's worth." Patel touched my elbow. "We'll finish paperwork inside," she said. "Then we'll go home. Home." The word fitted my mouth like the spoon I've used for 30 years. We walked back through the doors to sign the temporary protective order, the police intake forms, the notice to the bank. When it was done, the clerk handed me copies with raised seals that felt like armor you can fold. Daniel waited at the bottom of the stairs, eyes rimmed red. "Can I walk you to the car?" he asked. "You can walk me to the door," I said. "That's as far as the order permits." He nodded, grateful for rules. On the landing, I stopped and faced him. "You told me I was confused," I said, voice soft. "You told me I was worthless." "You were wrong," He swallowed. I know. Do you? He looked at the ceiling, then at me. I will, he said. Make it sooner, I replied. You're running out of Fridays. On the steps, the rain finished its thought and moved on. Tom brought the car around as if the day were heavy, and the trunk could carry some of it. Greer tipped 2 fingers to me like a soldier to a general who finally got her due. Teresa walked past with a folder, and did not stop me for a statement because she'd already written one in the place that matters. In the passenger seat, I closed my eyes and listened to the wipers. The day the clock spoke, I said, half to Tom, half to the house waiting for me. It didn't tick. It testified. Tom laughed low. Clocks are good witnesses, he said. They don't take sides. They take time. We drove home under a sky rinsed clean. The maple stood at attention, wet leaves shining like medals. I unlocked my door and stepped inside the kitchen that had been a theater, then a war room, then a chapel. The clock ticked its modest tick. I put my palm flat against the wall near the hook where my keys hung, where they would continue to hang until my hands were done with keys. Lines held. I told the empty room. The room, polite as ever, breathed back. Home isn't a place so much as a verdict, and mine was delivered on a Tuesday with the maple glittering like a medal after rain. The courthouse filings turned into headlines. Headlines turned into visits from people who had been watching from their curtains. And by the time the week wore through, the consequences had started arriving like honest bills. Mrs. Carter? A detective said on the phone, voice careful. We're moving forward with criminal charges, forgery and attempted exploitation. Noted, I said, pen poised over a clean page. And the cousin? License review, he replied. Starlight Realty has already suspended him. The state board moves slower than weather, but they move. Riverbend? I asked, standing at the window where my reflection carried both the bruise and the woman who wore it. Directors on administrative leave pending an internal audit, he said. Your PI's report helped. Good, I answered, and when we hung up, I let the quiet be a blessing for a full minute. Daniel called that night, voice soft as a worn shirt. Mom, the DA offered me a deal, he said. Paperwork fraud. I pled. You pled. I repeated, running a finger along the kitchen counter nick I never sanded out. Not guilty or guilty? Guilty, he whispered. I told them everything. About the cousin, about the texts, about Kelsey pushing. I'm sorry. Stay sorry, I said gently. It will keep you from becoming this man again, Kelsey didn't call. She doubled down, exactly as Tom predicted, then flipped when the cousin balked at sharing the blame. I learned the updates the way widows learn the weather. Second hand, accurate enough to choose a coat. Trial dates circled in my mind like geese. I let Patel carry those calendars. Focus on living, she told me in her office, sliding a new pile of papers toward me. Let me hold the rest. I know how to hold, I said, and signed where she tapped. I changed the locks the next day. The locksmith was fast and kind and didn't speak in metaphors, which was a relief. Deadbolt solid, he said, testing it. Keyways are smooth. You'll be fine. I'll be fine, I repeated, hearing Michael say, lines will hold the way a man says goodnight when he already knows he'll sleep. In Patel's office, sunlight knifing across the table, lemon candies like coins. I revised my will. I sat up straight and said the words as clearly as I could. I want a scholarship in Michael's name at the vocational school. $1,000 a year for a lineman's kid who can't quite make the numbers talk. Patel looked up, surprised and pleased. That's beautiful. It's practical, I said. It turns hurt into something you can hand to someone else. Who are your personal beneficiaries? She asked, pen poised. Lena, I said, and a small gift for Maya. I paused, then added, with a letter telling them both that love is a decision you keep making. Understood, Patel said, and typed 2 names that made my heart feel correctly weighted. Lena came the next weekend with a grocery bag of tulip bulbs. and eyes that had been on airplanes too long. She stood on the porch and cried the way daughters do when the mother they've put inside parentheses steps out and speaks in bold. "I should have come sooner," she said, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "I'm sorry. I'm late to things too," I replied, and we both laughed because it was true, and it hurt less than it should have. We planted tulips around the maple, knees in the damp earth, hands cold and useful. "You and Dad always did things the long way," she said, pressing a bulb pointy side up like we were packing parachutes. "The long way is the safe way," I told her. "It lets you look around." "Do you forgive me?" she asked, not looking up. "For what?" I said. "For being young when I was old? For living your life? I forgive you for the things you didn't do. I forgive myself for thinking I could do them for you." She leaned back on her heels and looked at me like a new photograph trying to develop. "I'll come every month," she said. "I'll bring bagels. I'll learn the third stair squeak. Bring a good knife," I said. "Bagels fight back." The neighbors brought casseroles, the way small towns do when a storm has passed through and there's roof to be tarped. Meatloaf, baked ziti, a peanut butter pie that could have passed for apology if apologies were made of sweetness. Dolores from the laundry came with a stack of dish towels. "They're still good," she said. "They just tried to retire." Maya showed up with a hug that was all elbow and heart. "I got into the tech academy," she blurted, bouncing. "They gave me a partial scholarship." "I'll match it," I told her. $1,000 from me, to be replenished annually by a stubborn maple and a woman who knows how to count. She blinked. "Are you serious?" "As a deadbolt," I said. "Let me be your fierce old auntie with check-writing privileges." She laughed and cried at the same time, which is my favorite way to watch the young be both. I volunteer twice a week at the hospital gift shop now. Teresa stops by to say hello, and we have developed a ritual. She buys a peppermint, I straighten a row of tiny stuffed bears, and we exchange one sentence about the weather and one about truth. The sunlight on the glass makes everything look clean. I like making change for the nurses at 3 in the afternoon, when sugar is both a promise and a bribe. I like watching new fathers try to decide between pink and yellow, and realizing they can buy both. I like being in a place where emergencies end and begin, and life keeps putting on its shoes anyway. "Evelyn," the volunteer coordinator said last week, placing a name tag in my palm like a medal. "You're a natural." "I fold uniforms in my sleep," I told her. "Gift wrap is just laundry that smiles." On Fridays at 3:30 p.m., I take a dust cloth to the kitchen clock and give it a gentle polish. It's silly, maybe, to honor a deadline that once tried to bury me, but rituals turn scars into something you can point to without flinching. I dust, I smile, and I whisper, "We remember." If I'm feeling theatrical, I give it a small bow. It has earned one. "Do you ever get lonely?" Lena asked one evening on the front porch, the sky going blue. The way good evenings do when supper's already warming itself in the oven. "Lonely is a room with no names in it," I said. "I have names. I have yours. I have Michael's. I have Button the squirrel's, though he's probably a great-grandfather now. I have Teresa and Patel and Tom and Maya, and the teller named Ruth. I have the maple." She squeezed my hand. "I like your ledger." "It's not a ledger," I said. "It's a ledger of storms. Old age isn't weakness. It is a ledger of every storm you've survived." I let the words sit in the air because sometimes wisdom needs to be aired out like quilts. "These tulips will come up in spring," she said, brushing soil from her palms. "They will," I answered. "We'll drink tea and judge them for being too bold, and forgive them for being exactly what they are." In the evenings, I host tea on the porch without checking over my shoulder. The maple throws a tablecloth of shade over us, and we drink from cups that don't match because matching is for photographs. I've started inviting 2 widowers from down the block on Tuesdays. We call it Grief Club, and talk about tomato plants. Tom comes by on Saturdays with a newspaper tucked under his arm and a joke tucked under that. "Clerk says your PI made the cousins sweat." He'll say, sipping coffee, "Sweat's good for men who cut corners for a living." "Tell the clerk I said thank you," I answer. "Tell her I have lemon bars when she's off." Sometimes I walk to lawyer's office just to sign the last of the paperwork slowly, and to take a candy from the jar like a benediction. Patel has started talking to me like a friend who knows where the flashlight is kept. "Your case is going to be a training example," she said, stacking copies in a tidy pile. "How to do it right. How to be old right," I teased. "How to be brave right," she corrected, smiling. The locks shine new in the afternoon. The will sits where the deed used to sit. Newer paper on top of old, both speaking the same language. Daniel stops by on Sunday afternoons and sits on the porch step because the order still keeps him on the correct side of the line. We talk about weather, then real things. He has started seeing a counselor who looks like he could bench press shame. "I'm working," Daniel tells me, earnest, jaw unclenched. "I'm paying back what I can. I'll testify when they ask." "Do that," I say. "Then come help me mulch." "Deal," he says, and for the first time in a long while, it sounds like one. Kelsey sends a letter through her lawyer, the kind that talks too long without saying sorry. I put it under the clock for a day so time can read it, then I give it to Patel. "Return to sender," I tell the clock. Insufficient truth. On Sundays, after church and before Lena's call, I take a chair to the garden and sit with the tulip bed like it's a friend who has good news and needs me to react properly. The soil smells right. The bulbs do their slow, tight work. The maple throws confetti in October and rocket shade in July. Home, with the maple still standing. It's a sentence I can say aloud without checking if anyone is listening to take it away. "Evelyn, you're different," Dolores said the other day at the market, eyeing my cart like it contained the secret to something. "Lighter." "I weighed the lies," I said. "I put them down." "Keep them down," she said, and we laughed because that's how you lift heavy things. Together, sideways. At night sometimes I talk to Michael, not at the cemetery. I prefer the kitchen where the clock keeps me honest. "We did it," I tell him, wiping the last crumb from the counter. "We paid in full. Again." I straighten the photo wall and add one frame. Maya at her academy orientation, grinning, lanyard crooked. Underneath, I write in a small hand, "Paid $1,000 toward one bright future, to be replenished annually by stubbornness and mint tea. Grandma energy," Maya said when I told her. "You're unstoppable." "No," I corrected. "I'm stoppable. I just chose not to stop here." When the porch light clicks on at dusk, I feel the house smile. Yes, houses smile. And I feel the day tuck itself in around the edges like a well-made bed. The clock breathes. The maple keeps the street honest. In my chest, where the panic used to sit like a tenant who pays late and complains early, there is room enough for quiet. Lines held. I whisper to the evening. Lines will hold. And the night, polite as ever, breathes back. If you were me, 69, alone in a quiet house, would you fight your own blood? Would you set a camera? Would you walk into a courtroom with shaking hands and a steady voice? Tell me honestly, where is the line between loyalty and survival? Tell me in the comments what you would have done. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs a reminder. You are not crazy, you are not worthless, and your dignity matters. Your keys, your name, your home. Guard them like breath. Remember, true family is not defined by blood, but by love and respect. And old age is not weakness. It is wisdom and strength. If my story helped you find your voice, say so below. I'll be on the porch dusting the clock at 3:30, listening.